Welcome back to the Valley to Peak Nutrition Podcast. Unfortunately, there's a high likelihood that everyone listening to this podcast right now personally knows someone who's been affected by a diagnosis of cancer. That can have a profound effect on us in a variety of different ways. Today, I'm joined by Rachael Sanchez as she shares her personal experience and what it was like for her. Rachael and I worked together for a period of time, but there was a consistent phrase that she began to use in her weekly check-ins. I'm starting to feel like myself again. The first time I read it, I didn't think anything about it, but as I continued to see it pop up in the check-ins, I started to think, I can't imagine what it feels like to actually feel like you're losing yourself and how you feel. And then to feel like you're getting a piece of that back has to feel like one of the greatest rewards. I was curious, so I asked if she'd be willing to share her story, and this podcast is the outcome of that.
I'm Rachael Sanchez. I live in a little town called Saguache, Colorado. I'm a mother to a beautiful little 7-year-old daughter. I'm a forester for the Forest Service, and my husband and I love to hunt, fish, hike, ride horses, anything outside. And I found Valley to Peak through doing the Mountain Tough daily workouts. All your information in the app.
Yeah, so I think the first time that, if I remember right, and feel free to correct my dates if I get this wrong, I think the first time that you had reached out was like early part of last year. I remember being in Salt Lake at Hunt Expo and getting a text message from you about something we had covered in your initial onboarding. So it was almost a year ago, which is hard to believe.
I know it. Time flies.
It does fly. So
Yeah.
you were in Valley to Peak. We worked together for a little while, but that's not really the point of why I thought it would be awesome to have you come on here. As a part of Valley to Peak, there's weekly check-ins that people submit, and there was a answer that you kept giving in your weekly check-in that always stood out to me. And you kept saying you're starting to feel like your former self. And I had the privilege of getting to know you, so I knew what that meant. And I want to get to that part because obviously that part's the exciting part. You know, you start to
Mhm.
feel like you had previously felt. But for the listeners, can you give some backstory about kind of the last couple of years leading into when you had first reached out in February?
Yeah, it's actually, it's been a long journey. So I got diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2018 and have gone through several courses of treatment since then, several rounds of immunotherapy. And then the big one was chemotherapy with the whole lose your hair, not feel great whole thing, right? I was in remission for 9 months post chemo. And then I had another flare up. So then I had what's called a CAR T cell therapy, or like a T cell transplant. And I finished that almost a year ago. So I finished that right before Thanksgiving of 2023. So I had that little rest period from December, January, February of like just trying to get myself back together. And then I was just over it, over not feeling good and over basically not knowing how to get back to 2018, basically. And that's what drove me to contact you.
So you had undergone all of this like treatment, really that I didn't even know this goes all the way back to 2018. What do
Yeah.
you like? So when you would enter in there that you're starting to feel like your former self, and you know, I'm sure some of this is obvious, some of it may not be though. Like what happened as you go through those therapies? What started to make you feel like you weren't you, if that makes sense?
Yeah, totally. So each therapy has a different reaction, does something different, tries to fight something different, and they just stack on top of each other, one after the other for what felt like forever, but really they last like 3 months at a time, and then you're free basically. You live your life, but they're still in your body, working towards fighting the cancer. So they start out gradual. So the first few immunotherapies weren't that bad, but then the like on my self, they just kind of slow you down. And of course, I had my daughter was only a year and a half old too at that time. So, like, also recovering from having a baby on top of all of that. And then I had chemo, which lasted 8 months total. And you just have a chemo injection every other week for 6 months, and then they monitor you. And I ended up getting one more just to, I guess, make sure, get another punch. And that was the worst one. It affects your everything. I felt like I couldn't breathe, felt like I couldn't hike. It kind of messed with my heart a little bit, and I had to have some heart monitoring stuff happen. The altitude that I live at wasn't helping either. We live at almost 8,000 feet and recreate at 10 to 13,000 feet on a regular basis. And I actually ended up getting altitude sickness for the first time when I had chemo, which was not very fun. And I've never experienced anything like that.
So you literally felt like everything you knew, everything you loved got taken from you because you were really active,
Yeah.
just like through our conversations, felt like you had good strength, you felt like you had all of these things, and then as a byproduct of the treatment, you couldn't do those things. So you truly felt like you weren't yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I kept working out and I kept busy and doing things, but like there was one point I couldn't even throw my own saddle on my horse. Like, and I've been putting it up there since I was 12 years old, you know. So just that right there just crushed me. Or being able to, we hike my daughter's mountain every year. She's named after a mountain around here, and I couldn't even do. That's where I got altitude sickness. I tried, and I couldn't even do that. And yeah, that just culminating one after the other, and
So
then
that,
yeah,
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There's obviously like the physical component of that, you not feeling like yourself and being unable to do things that you had done, and those things obviously requiring a lot of physicality. But I would imagine there's a mental piece to this, too. Like while you're unable to do those things and you don't feel like yourself and you don't have the strength that you're used to having, what was that? What was that part like? I mean, I would imagine that that's probably even harder than the physical piece of it.
the physical piece bothered me a lot more. It just made me mad, and I'm pretty mentally tough in general. And I think the mental part of it was like, man, I can't do that, which means, shoot, I'm gonna, I'm gonna try to throw this saddle up there all day long, and just try to, keep walking. It made me push myself almost too hard physically, the mental part, because I was just like, I'm gonna win, I'm gonna beat this, and I'm gonna crush it no matter what. And sometimes it led me to be extremely exhausted and have to lay in bed for a day after. And but I think that's what kind of kept me going. It was like, I'm not gonna let this win. And the way that you beat it is you stay strong mentally and physically, no matter what. I mean, whether that looks like you could just walk down the driveway and back, right? But you have to do it. You can't lay down and just let it beat you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So you fast forward to February. Did you at some point then like get the all clear from your doctors that you can start trying to resume your normal life?
Yep. So after the CAR T cell therapy, which was in October, it was actually exactly a year ago, the therapy part, they monitor you, and I had to live in Denver for a month and a half. Um, and when they finally let me go home, I had one more checkup in December right before Christmas, and they told me then that it all looked like I was still cancer free and that I could resume normal activity, like just live your life basically. So I let the holidays go by, and then in December or in February, I was like, all right, let's figure out how to get better.
What was like, so when you had initially reached out, what in your mind, like what did you feel, what made you feel like you wanted a, I hate this word, but it's like just the word that people associate with stuff like what Valley to Peak is. What made you feel like you needed a program? That's the word I
Sure.
hate. To
Yeah.
like to do that. What were the confusing parts? What were you trying to achieve that you felt like you didn't quite have either the information you needed or the guidance or what to get that next path forward?
Yeah. So I thrive on like almost like a schedule and just something like ABCD. Here's what you need to do. And most people don't know, but when you're on chemo, you're on a lot of steroids, and they cause you to gain weight. Like no matter, you can't avoid it. So I gained quite a bit of weight, more than I wanted to, and I had tried for a long time. Well, for about a year to get it off, and then the CAR T thing happened, and put that on the back burner, obviously. And then I just decided I don't know what I'm doing. Like I basically was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm working out every day, and I thought I was eating all right, but nothing was moving. And I just decided I have no clue how to make this weight move or how to get stronger or anything. So that's where you came in. I needed a plan.
And so we sat down and like this is the same for everyone, but I would be curious to hear your answer here. Because you like had a lot of questions at first. Great questions
Yeah. Yeah.
about things you had previously read, heard, or tried, or whatever. And to be honest with you, that's true of everyone. Like I know oftentimes much of my time is it's much of my time is spent as much on helping a person develop a plan as it is debunking what they've heard prior to coming in, which is
Mhm.
great. I mean, I think both of those elements are really important. So you and I, we talked through some of this and we chatted through your prior history and the attempts that you'd already made because you certainly had done due diligence to yourself to try to do this. And you just, like you were saying, you just felt like you weren't really seeing the return on the investment in time that you were making at this. And it didn't make sense to you. And it didn't make sense to me either based on what you were telling me. So we sit down and map out the plan. Here's the question for you. The initial stages are always very, very basic. So when we sat down and we created the plan for you, and I was like, for the first 2 to 3 weeks, or 3 to 4 weeks, whatever, this is all I want you to do, which was get into the rhythm of tracking and I mean, very basic stuff. What did you leave that conversation thinking?
I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. I can track stuff. I can do whatever he says basically, but actually tracking is not very easy.
Yeah,
That might be the hardest part.
the staying up on it, you mean?
Yeah. And being accurate.
Yeah, so we initially kind of sat down and ironed out a couple of those things, and you started to be consistent. But like what you said is perfect because the consistency part of the tracking, though, isn't complicated. It can be challenging. What made you stay motivated? Because like you went the full stretch. What made you stay motivated whenever you felt like, oh man, some of these things, though not complicated, are daunting?
The end goal, like knowing that pushing through all of this stuff is going to get me where I want to be, which is hiking to the top of the mountain as fast as my husband can, and keeping up with our daughter. Um, so just constantly reminding myself, you could track this one dinner of chicken and broccoli or this one pizza dinner. Like, yeah, you might have pizza a lot, which we did, but learning how to track it right was kind of a game changer, really. Just figuring out, like, oh, that's how many calories are in a slice of pizza. Yeah.
And I would say, like, I think you bring up a good point because when people hear things like measuring your portion sizes or, God forbid, weighing your food or tracking your food, I think that it's often like those three things specifically have often been used as a way to restrict people and or
Mhm.
as a way to kind of browbeat people into pointing out things they're doing that are bad. That is
Yeah.
not the intent of it, at least not for us. The intent of it is, you said it perfectly. The intent of it is to teach you about nutrition. So, what does a slice of pizza have? What does that mean in the context of my actual targets for the goal that I have set? And what do I want to do with that? You may not want to change anything, and that's fine if you don't. But at least you have the knowledge now to make some guided decisions as opposed to just kind of swinging at the air but never really hitting anything. So I think it's great that that was one of the takeaways that you had. What did you
Yeah.
notice that happened on a week by week basis as you started tracking and you started to develop consistency? And I guess another part of that question would be like, what was the most surprising thing about nutrition in general to you throughout the entire time that you were working towards your goal?
So the most surprising thing to me was learning how to fuel my body um, while at work, like hiking a lot, because I had never been good at that, as you know. And then once you gave me these little tips, man, it just changed my whole work day, honestly. Like I could walk and hike to trees and measure and walk back to the truck and then walk somewhere else and come back and do that all day without bonking. And it was wonderful, all because of what I was supposed to eat.
And I will add, smoking all of your male counterparts to the top of the mountain every
That's
time
right.
that you hiked and were out with them.
That's right.
I was just thrilled for you because one thing that I remember in your check-ins was you being surprised at your own capabilities when you started to implement these, these different, like you were saying, little tips that we would talk about each week.
Yeah. Yeah. That you're talking about the pack test. Yeah.
Yeah.
When we all did the pack test and we all had the same weight on. And yeah, I beat everybody in my group that day. So it
You're
felt pretty
so
good.
humble. Yeah, you did. You smoked them all. That was awesome.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the first question? I forgot.
I forgot to, but I think the main question was like, what was the most surprising thing to you? Because like when you, like I said, you, like everyone, this isn't unique to you. This is all of us. Like the number one answer that we get on the applications with the Valley to Peak forms as to why you reach out is confusion. That's the number one answer that we've had over the last 8 years that we've done this is confusing. I'm confused about what to do.
Yeah.
So you have all of this background of like stuff that's been thrown over you, trends that have been thrown over you, things that have been, people have been trying for however many years prior to them reaching out. So it's always interesting to me to hear what the greatest takeaway is from someone as they go through their own process, and start to learn what really matters with nutrition because everyone's answer is going to be different for that. But I would say the overarching thing that everyone says in some way, shape, or form is just how simple it was, right? Like how uncomplicated it was when you compare it to all of these other things that I've seen floating around prior to coming into this. And yeah, so for you, like the little tips as far as fueling when you're working, it's huge.
Yeah, actually, I felt like once I figured out what you were like and your program was like, I mean, my my mom would ask me, "So what do you have to cut out? What can't you eat?" And I was like, "Nothing." Like if I want to eat your birthday cake, like I can have a slice of cake. I just got to track it. And she just it it blew her mind and a lot of other people too. Like, oh, you don't have to cut out X, Y, and Z. No, it's just quantity,
Yeah.
really. And that's refreshing actually, is that you can still eat nachos or and then eat your elk steak and eat things that you like still throughout the whole program.
Yeah. Good. Well, I mean, it thrills me to hear that's the takeaway because that's the goal, is
Yeah.
to help people feel like that. So, what was in your mind? Because so we kind of onboarded, started at the end of February, early March. You graduated 2 months ago, end of August. Is that right?
Yep.
If I remember right.
Yep.
In your mind, what was your greatest accomplishment in that stretch of time?
Um, honestly, the the I honestly feel like it was learning how to eat. I feel so much better. Even like we just got back from our week long elk hunt, right? And in the past, I would try to eat as much protein and as much fat because that's what I thought we were supposed to do to keep ourselves moving. And I would always feel like absolute poo. And then like implementing what you taught me how to eat, and then telling my husband to do the same thing. So we both learned how to eat better on the mountain for sure. And that has made us just dominate, I guess. Like we didn't get tired. I mean, I felt like we could go for days. I mean, it took us 2 days to pack out my elk because it was so far and so steep, and I felt great.
How many days did it take to pack out his elk? Because you guys are on
Half a
fire this
day.
year. Yeah.
Half a day for his, which is thankfully because our daughter was with us for the whole thing for his. So that was super fun. And then we went to the same spot for mine, but it was like full of just people everywhere. So we ended up packing up our camp on our backs and hiking a lot further and got it back in some deep, dark hole, basically, um, and spent a good while packing it back to the road.
Yeah. But I think that, like, as simple as that can sound, just learning how to eat, I think it's a good, like, that's a really good all-encompassing phrase because it's not just limited to performance on the mountain. It's not just
Yeah.
limited to when you're having to travel for to see family or for treatment or for whatever. Like you carry with you a knowledge that can be applied anywhere. And I think that that's important, like for people to think about in any kind of a program they do, whether it's nutrition or training or whatever, even if it's not with us. There should at some point that program should be equipping you with the knowledge that you can have autonomy, that you know how it works and you can graduate and move on. It's not like this perpetual system where you're buying, like I tell people when we used to write meal plans, which was a long time ago before we started like developing a
Mm.
system and a process, you feel like a human version of Nutrisystem or something because you're
Yeah.
basically people are just reliant on you. They're successful, but you're the only person that knows why. And so when they graduate and there's no more meal plans coming, unless they just keep duplicating what they'd previously done, which most people don't want because they want variety, then
Yeah.
that progress goes away. But when you give them the knowledge, right? It's the adage of fishing. If you teach a man to fish versus if you give him a fish, there's a big difference in the outcome there. And so, as basic as it can sound to say that you kind of learned how to eat, I think it's a really good phrase to point out, a lot of different variables in terms of equipping you with the future. So that's great. Makes me happy to hear that's what your takeaway was.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the answer everyone wants to hear is like, I lost all the weight I wanted to lose, right? Like I did meet my goal, but actually learning how to eat helps me maintain that goal, I think. So
Yeah.
kind of go hand in hand.
What What about now? Like, what goals do you have now? Where are you at now with everything?
Um, so I want to maintain for sure. And actually, this is going to make you laugh. My next goal, I think, is I adopted a donkey and I want to do a donkey 5K
Oh,
in
okay.
next summer where you run a 5K with your donkey. And I hate running. Like I hate it. So I think that's my next step is my donkey and I starting to run.
That is the first time I've ever heard that, but that's exciting.
I'm sure. it's a thing here in Colorado. You could look it up in some of the mining towns. The donkey races. It's kind of funny.
It kind of makes me want to buy a donkey.
Yeah, they're fun. They're really cute and they're companionable, and mine's really sweet. So yeah.
Is there a difference? Like this is total sidetrack. It's gonna show my lack of knowledge for that type of animal. Is there a difference between a donkey and a mule?
Yeah, so a mule is a cross between a male donkey and a female horse.
And a donkey's full-blooded
Just a
female
donkey.
male donkey.
Yep, yep.
Are there differences in size?
Yeah, there's mammoth donkeys, which can be like 14 hands. So that's what would that be in human? Maybe like 5 feet tall. And then
Wow.
there's just a donkey, which is the normal size. So like mine goes to like my chest kind of. And then there's minis that are like, like knee height. They're tiny, like a dog size.
So will said donkey be used as a pack animal too?
Yes, that's the goal.
So he's not just a 5K-er, he's also going to
No.
be an endurance guy. Good. That's great. Cool.
Yep. Yep. He's going to be used to pack stuff.
All right. So
Hopefully animals.
well, if you guys keep this up, he's going to get practice very quickly and very fast and a
Yeah.
lot of practice.
Yeah.
So final question. Obviously you have gone through a lot, you've endured a lot, not just like with the training nutrition piece of things, but with life. What piece of encouragement would you give someone, regardless of what they're facing? Something to them seems like just some massive mountain in their way. What piece of encouragement, advice, or wisdom would you give them?
Keep going. There's no hard path, no anything that's too tough to climb, in my opinion. You just got to dig. It will be hard. My journey has been hard. My childhood my father had a liver transplant and was in a coma for like 3 months when I was 15. And I basically raised my brother and sister during that time. So my mom could be with my dad. And I think that is what started my whole mental toughness journey, to be honest with you. But I just think you can always climb out of whatever it is, whether it's debt or you lost your faith or a family tragedy, whatever it is, just there's always light at the end of the tunnel, I think. You just got to keep digging.
I want to thank Rachel for being willing to come on and share her story. Our hope is that if you or someone you know is walking through something similar, even if it's not necessarily, cancer diagnosis or treatment, anything like that, that's just tough, we hope that you find some hope out of this and some encouragement that just helps you personally continue on. So if you have any questions for Rachel, she has graciously shared her contact information in the show notes. You can reach out to her. And she would be, as she has said, more than happy to speak to anybody who might have questions or comments or anything like that. We'll be back again in another couple of weeks with more new episodes. We appreciate you joining us. Have a great week, everyone.